Hello and welcome to another episode of Doc. I'm Ian, your host. I'm joined again by Matt. Hello.
Hi everyone.
Today we're talking about episode 5 of Tiger King. I can't believe we've made it this far.
I know, man. It's been a long haul.
It's incredible. It's like an incredible documentary, and this episode just makes it kind of seem even more like that. I mean,
it's a dark episode, man. As this series has gone, like there's some really like, I suppose the subject matter you could look at as quite dark anyway. But there's a lot of kind of funny moments and just quite joyous moments. And just there's always something going on. But like, this one, whoa, like very dark.
There's a couple of times in this episode I like pretty much shouted like "what the fuck" at the screen just watching it, because I've seen the first 4 episodes already, because we as we said last episode, we tried to do this in 2 parts. So I'd seen everything up to this point. So this is the first fresh episode I haven't seen, and I was surprised about it. It just blew my mind.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about in this episode.
But before we crack on, actually, there's a couple of things I want to talk about that we found out this week. So Jeff Lowe, the guy who was talking quite a lot about towards the end of the last episode, the really cool guy.
Oh yeah, that guy.
Yeah, the guy with
the beard, the clothes, so cool.
The beard, the clothes. Him wearing his outfit. He has been reported on like a lot of blog sites and stuff saying that Netflix are going to release a new episode this week of Tiger King. So there's 7 episodes of Tiger King, and they're releasing one more supposedly this week.
From what I've read, it says Friday, but I'd say take that with a grain of salt. One, because the sources I've read have only come from Jeff. I've not read anywhere that Netflix have actually stated that this is going to be the case. And I imagine if it was going to be put out to the public, I would imagine that Netflix would have a hand in it, not just Jeff. But I also hear that Jeff is trying to start another zoo. So it could be a little bit of a marketing tool for him. Maybe, but we'll see. I guess we'll see.
Anyway, and just before I move on, I also heard that there's rumors that it could be a reunion show, as far as I can tell. Like I've heard rumors that that's what the show could be. It's like almost like a kind of a post reaction to the series, like what people are doing now. It's kind of like just a brush up.
Yeah, I mean that could be could be interesting. Depending again where it goes. And we get to see where people are,
see what happens, I guess. And lastly, this is tragic news for me. And I feel so silly after last episode, because what I'm about to say is it destroys me to say this.
What are you going to say?
That Joe Exotic,
yeah,
doesn't sing his own song.
Oh no! Oh man, you mean I was right?
Yeah. So I found out that I'll link it in, like, we'll link what we just talked about in the show notes. But I found out through Cosmopolitan, of all places. It just popped up on my Facebook feed, like as a sponsored ad thing. And they said like, oh, Joe Exotic doesn't sing his own songs, and he didn't write them.
Oh wow!
So what happened was it Vanity Fair investigated? They did like some digging and stuff, because there was a lot of people on like Twitter and stuff. Everybody had the same idea as us at the beginning, saying
that can't be him.
It seems too good to be true, because I have him on. I watch it subtitled, this show, because I do find Joe kind of hard to understand, like sometimes. Especially in this episode.
I was actually going to mention that. Like, I found in this episode, I mean, obviously we'll go into more, but he came off as if he was drunk a lot of the time. Yeah, but again, we can go into that more with the kind of subject matter that comes through this episode.
Yeah, we don't spoil it, but I mean, everybody who's listening to this may have watched it already, hopefully,
Yeah.
because we're. But I mean, the way we kind of talk about the episodes, you essentially don't need to watch it because we go through every single point bit by bit, pretty much. So, on Cosmopolitan, they said like, yeah, according to Vanity Fair, who did some digging, the musicians responsible for Joe's tracks are the Clinton Johnson Band.
Right.
That's Vince Johnson and vocalist Danny Clinton. And both men are listed in the Tiger King credits. And I looked into it. Well, I basically read the rest of the article, and Joe had contacted them to do some songs for the reality TV show. So when he was shooting with Rick Kirkham, he contacted them to do some shows, to do some songs about like him. And they thought, oh, it'd be good exposure for them because he didn't pay anything to them.
Oh, wow.
So he did, a couple of the songs that are featured in this are done by them, done by the Clinton Johnson Band. And they said like, oh yeah, because nothing happened with the TV show. They looked into, they thought, oh, we'll just type it in Google. See, Joe Exotic in Google, and they found on like a YouTube video of him just miming along to the songs and claiming them that they're his own. So,
well, oh man, that's I mean, really, when you really think about it, like, I guess it makes sense. Like, it was our first kind of initial thought anyway.
Yeah.
But even more, when you really think about it, you would think to yourself, okay, if Joe was in any kind of money trouble, and there's no doubt that is a good singing voice. I'm sure there would be a way of making money out of that, especially in the United States where country music is absolutely huge. So yeah, I guess really the more you think about it, it does kind of make sense, but equally quite disappointing.
Yeah, I was surprised. I mean, just after last week where we was discussing like, oh, we've seen him sing now, so we know it's legit.
Oh well, never mind. Oh,
sorry, listeners. Yeah. Like, just as we find out like some kind of anything, it seems to get just contradicted in the next episode. So,
oh man, never mind.
But we hold our hands up. We were fooled.
Yeah, I mean, and sadly as well, like at the start of this whole thing, I was really, really backing Joe, and it seems the more I find out, the more I'm kind of like, oh man, he's not as much of the underdog as first thought and as first portrayed. Yeah, just a bit disappointing.
It kind of unravels as it goes on, doesn't it? It kind of goes from rooting for him to thinking, hey, maybe it's kind of we've been fooled, or like overall. But the thing is,
just feels
you're blindsided by his personality. Aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. It's smoke and mirrors completely. And yeah, it's just a bit disappointing. And it just comes across, at least to me anyway, that Joe was possibly exploiting, or well, it looks very much like Joe was exploiting more than just tigers, exploiting people too. And just a little bit disappointing.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get into the episode. All right. So, the episode opens with Doc Ansel talking about throwing a chimp birthday party. And I was like, "Oh, what is that?" Like, I mean, I didn't think it was an actual like birthday party for chimps. I thought it would be like him taking like a chimp to like a kid's birthday party.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it's him just talking about his social media and saying that his social media is the most unique social media out there for like zoos, and they do loads of crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Yeah, like it's well, not raking the millions, but it's there's like millions and millions of views a week, and people are like loving
Yeah.
it. Um, and yeah, I don't know, it's such a random thing to start. I feel like he's really trying to push this like his social media thing now because last episode he was like kind of Carol got in there first, so
Yeah, I mean
but
it's another form of income, and
yeah,
obviously, the more people, the more fans you have, the more you're going to make in any situation like that. So it's totally understandable. Um, but I initially thought as well. I was thinking of his name escapes me now. But the Tony
what do you
Montana
got?
of
Oh,
that's
Mario.
it. Yeah, sorry, Mario. Where his wife is talking about the chimps and she says, doesn't she, like that maybe she loves them slightly more than her own children. So at first I was thinking, oh wow, is Doc Ant all the same? Like, yeah, my kids ain't getting a birthday pie, but the chimps, oh yeah, they're having a party. Where's the cake at?
Oh. No, I don't know. I mean, I guess like they're all trying to do their own thing because with social media, that's key, isn't it? Because social media is going to be constantly making money throughout the year for
Yeah,
them.
it's it's
If they
it's
do,
basically free promotion as well. Like,
yeah, because it always keeps his zoo in
yeah,
mind, doesn't it? It's like, oh, okay, like you're following him on Instagram, you're like, oh,
exactly, and
we definitely need to go back to Tigers
for
again.
for
So
for fans of his zoo or any zoo, it's a window into his world. But the one thing you find with kind of with Doc Antle is he likes to be in control, and obviously with
yeah,
this promotion, this style of promotion, he's completely in control of that. So it works out perfectly for him.
yeah. As much as we joke about him, I'm definitely going to follow him on
Oh
Instagram
yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
because I really want to see where it goes, but I don't want to do it until after I finish the series, just in
Mm,
case. Like,
probably a good idea.
anyway, yeah, probably. So Joe's narration comes across. He's in jail, and well, still in jail. He's always in jail. He said it wasn't the zoo anymore. It was nothing but a big scam. Like referring to last episode where Jeff and Lauren had taken over the zoo, stole it from him as one employee who I can't remember said that. Um, and then it shows Jeff and Lauren throwing balloons to tigers, and they're just going, like the tigers are pouncing upon the balloons, and they're like, "Oh, cool."
I mean,
Um,
like someone says, I think it might have been Saf, says like the whole dynamic of the park changed when Jeff arrived, like completely changed, because I guess because to Joe, like Jeff at the time was this source of, okay, you can help me win this, you can help me beat Carol. So Joe basically bowed down to Jeff, and like I think even Bhagavan says he basically gave, like, Carol was after the key to Joe's park, and Joe got Jeff in to stop her from doing that, and then slyly Jeff took the keys to the park. So
Keys to the Kingdom.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, keys to
Yeah,
the kingdom. So quite the game of chess going on.
yeah. Jeff was just like he wanted to kind of he made some changes. He like built some like new areas of the park that Joe couldn't afford, and he wanted to kind of keep it like a family friendly, fun kind of park.
Mm-hmm.
And he got one of his friends involved. His name was Alan Glover,
Yep.
and this guy been in prison, but like Jeff seen him as like a really hard worker. He was always kind of like his like right hand guy, I
Yeah.
guess. He kind of seemed like, yeah, if he has this guy here, he knows things will get done. Like this is the guy you would go
Yeah.
to.
I mean, straight away as first impressions go, and this isn't like in any way like judgmental in terms of his past that they talk about in terms of his criminal past, because people change. But first impressions of this Alan guy, I don't get a good vibe. I don't know about you, but I just do not get a good vibe from him.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't so much. Like, I mean, like I don't know. I almost didn't write his name down at all because I thought, oh, it's kind of just like, I thought it's kind of a flash in the pan person on
Yeah.
there. But after watching it a little bit more, I was like, oh, I need to mention
Hmm.
him. And he says that he pretty much never been to a zoo before, like, and he has no kind of experience full stop with any of this stuff. So
Perfect guy for the job then.
yeah, he was like, yeah, let's get this guy. And what was it like? Joe, I mean, just kind of thought he was like kind of employed to spy on him, but we'll go into a little bit more like in a
Yeah.
bit. We meet this guy called James Garrettson.
Yep.
And he
Is he
basically
owner of a strip club or a strip bar or
yeah,
something?
yeah, he owns like strip clubs, like more than one, some bars apparently, and yeah, he just seems like quite a well-off guy, like a business guy, just like Jeff. But Joe introduced James to Jeff, and was it James basically said that they were not great friends, just friends.
Uh-huh.
Like he'd known Joe for 20 years. They weren't like, they weren't great friends, but just friends, which I thought was a great way of saying it. It's like he just seemed like there was like it was almost kind of like a frenemies kind of thing going on.
Yeah. I mean, like it comes across that he perhaps doesn't think all that much of Joe, and perhaps their paths first crossed. Maybe either one, maybe, hey, maybe James gets a free pass to the zoo, and Joe gets a free lap dance. Maybe there was some kind of deal like that going on. But actually, I don't know if Joe would want a lap dance from a female. Who knows?
No, well, it depends what other club he runs,
Yeah.
doesn't it? It's well, I mean, bar. He might get like free advertising, or maybe he took some tigers to the bar. Maybe he met him that way.
Maybe.
So promotions and whatnot. Anyway, so Jeff talks James into giving him $14,000 to open a pizza place right next to the tigers in the park.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see what the name of the pizza place was?
I just saw pizzeria.
No. It's got a name above it. I had to write this down. It's amazing. Zooters.
Oh wow, that's good. That's good. that's quite impressive. I did not spot that. No.
Yeah, I was like, I need to get back and make sure that was that. Yeah, it was Pasta and Pizzeria. Yeah, Zooters.
Wow.
I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, that's clever.
And we find out that the meat from the meat truck, the Walmart meat truck that was saved for the tigers initially, was used for the pizza meat and the stuff that goes on the pizza.
To save on costs, and maybe to give customers salmonella.
It's insane.
I certainly wouldn't want any pizza that had come from a used meat from a Walmart that they'd dispersed of because it wasn't good enough to feed to the public. Like that's really not good.
Yeah, but when you think about pepperoni, like as in the packs, that would last absolutely forever.
Would it? Would it in that kind of heat?
What, and these like kind of diced up like sausages packs where it's like salami and stuff like that. That stuff seems to be kind of
invincible.
Yeah. It's just in the fridge forever, and it doesn't ever seem to get like.
But again, it's like I think a lot of it boils down to is this Walmart truck is it refrigerated? No, then yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty sure they're not putting on their menu. By the way, guys, this has all come from a Walmart truck of dispersed of meat. I can't imagine they put that in their menu, and I can't imagine that if they did, that people would buy it. I mean, pepperoni pizza is great. Like I love me some pepperoni pizza, but I think even I'd be a bit funny about actually eating that.
Well, they don't know about it, but what's sad about it is obviously last episode they were saying about how there was like a lack of food for the animals overall. and like this comes in at
But
around the same
but
time. I'm not.
but
I'm
you've
not.
got to understand as well. By this point, Jeff's involved, and you know, maybe the food situation is for the animals is better now.
I don't. I mean, I don't think so. I think it's. I think they are saving just as much meat. I mean, Jeff's involved. He's maybe made more, but that's still like a lot of money a year to actually feed them. They're not eating like massive steaks,
No,
are they? They're going to be. Well, I mean, they might be from Walmart, but I mean, just maybe one between six of them or something.
yeah,
Um. Anyway, yeah, like let's try not to go there for food anytime. Yeah. So Jeff said that Joe said people don't come here to see the tigers; they come here to see me. So, and at this point, it seemed like Joe was getting, pretty big for his boots in that
yeah.
sense.
It's like
And
one
what?
thing. One. It's like Joe seems to go from one idea to the next. He can't seem to stick with one thing and be like, okay, this is my passion. This is what I'm going to pour my heart and soul into, and this is what I would like to do and carry on doing for the rest of my life. It seems, if it's not tigers and owning a zoo, it's creating an internet TV show, then creating a reality TV show, then creating music videos, and
Yeah.
and well, what's next?
Well, I'll tell you what's next. Joe announces he's going to run for president.
Wow.
President. So this was it 2015, I think, originally. So he announced he's running for president. He ends up getting on the John Oliver show, which is like an awesome show. If I've watched like bits of it, I watched like clips.
Yeah.
Occasionally
I've
of
seen
him
clips. I've never seen a full show. But yeah.
No, I haven't.
Same.
I mean,
I've seen clips.
He does cool like rants and stuff,
Yeah.
doesn't he? And yeah, John Oliver is basically talking about the candidates and stuff, and then he says like the third party runners and stuff, the independent guys, and he shows Joe's campaign video, and he shows like clips of it, and it's great. It's amazing.
I love the campaign video. I do think like yeah, Joe Exotic for president. The campaign video is just it's a winner in my eyes. Like just fantastic. Whether you'd want after that guy being your president, maybe not. But then look who they have now. I'm sure there's some that love who they have now. But just not me in my opinion.
So this is what Joe says in the video. I mean, it's cut like in the show, so it's probably not how he actually says it overall. But he goes, "I'm not changing the way I dress. I refuse to wear a suit. I am gay and I'm broke as shit. I have a judgment against me from some bitch down there in Florida, and this is all paid for by the committee of Joe Exotic Speaks for America."
It's brilliant. It's just brilliant.
Yeah, it's so raw. Like, I mean, it's like he's just putting that out there as like a shock video.
Yeah,
in that
and
sense.
it's another case of like I've said it many a times during these podcasts, but like what you see is what you get, and that's basically what he's saying in that video. Like I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to put on a suit and pretend to be some fat cat. Yeah, big cat, fat cat.
Yeah,
but he's like, this is me. I'm an average Joe basically, and I should be running the country.
average Joe.
But yeah, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. The fact that he even is attempting it is just like wow. Like there's definitely an ego going on there with him.
I just want one of those stickers, like the Joe Exotic for president. But I imagine after all this lockdown stuff is over, I'm going to be tripping over them in shops because this is like meme.
Either that or like
meme crazy,
stickers or like some pin badges or something.
I bet if I actually left where I live, I'd probably encounter some guy selling T-shirts of Joe Exotic. You know, just because there's that much hype around this
Yeah.
show right
Yeah,
now.
yeah. I mean, you could make a lot of money on merchandise from this show, definitely.
Yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, we see that Joe gets like a big head after this overall. Yeah, we see a video of him like blowing up a tree and stuff, and he's like, "That's how we take care of ISIS."
Oh, the Joe Exotic way. And
then we meet.
you know that,
Go on.
like,
Sorry.
the thing is, I'm pretty sure on that alone there would be people that would vote for him. Yeah,
Absolutely.
100%, 100%. Just on that one piece of footage alone, there would be people that would be like, okay, this is our guy. He's going to get the job done.
Well, it's because he has like no filter. He's just speaking everything and stuff. And as we've seen, that works in becoming a president of the United States.
Most definitely. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Very much so, unfortunately.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's crazy. So we next meet Joshua Dial.
Yeah.
He's Joe's campaign manager and also former manager at Walmart.
Which is where he met Joe. So I guess Joe's shopping. Well, he was going in for ammunition, wasn't he? I believe he says.
Yeah.
So this is where he was getting the ammunition for, you know, shooting Carol, the sex doll, shooting water, shooting a bed, shooting a watch. This is where he got his ammunition and where he met Joshua. Yeah,
because he's like manager of the ammo section, isn't he? So
he actually, like, I think from what I've seen of him, I mean, obviously this is like the first part of meeting him, but he comes across as one of the kind of most like down to earth, kind of like real, like nice people in the whole thing.
Yeah, I really like him.
Same.
Yeah, I think he's. I just feel like a lot of his stuff is kind of truth based stuff. It feels like he kind of.
It just seems the most kind of human. Like, if that makes any sense. Yeah, he seems like just nice. Like he can see perhaps some of Joe's downsides, but he also sees Joe as a person at the end of the day. And yeah, he comes across very, very likable. But not in the same way that Joe was at the beginning of all this, because of like Joe came across as likable because of just his absolute eccentricity and his character, which obviously, as we've said, you know, quite possibly was just quite a lot of smoke and mirrors. But whereas Joshua, he just seems like a down to earth, nice guy.
Yeah, he does seem like the first normal person we've met in this documentary overall. I mean, I would say out there's three people in the documentary I feel like are just good people, like Saf, Joshua, and Eric.
I'm in agreement, definitely. I'd say at this point at least, they're my top three.
So the president thing fell to pieces. Obviously, I didn't think it was going to work out. I think he was mainly doing it for like publicity.
Yeah.
Overall.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to say I doubt that he thought he would ever actually win, but this is Joe Exotic we're talking about, so perhaps he did deep down. But yeah, I think the publicity side of it was probably a big factor as well.
Yeah. So he decides to run for governor of Oklahoma.
Why not,
Yeah, because he didn't want to wait for the change. He wanted to make the change. So, what better way to do this than to hand out condoms with his face on them? And my favorite bit is he hands them out, and there's like a mum looking at it, like with her daughter right next to her, like she's just like looking back and forth, like with this condom, like so cringe. And we find out that he took Travis's surname as
Mm-hmm.
well, which was interesting. I didn't know if there was gonna be like some kind of triple barrel name um, overall. I don't know if John took Travis's surname at that point when they got
Yeah, I
married.
don't know actually. That'd be interesting to
No,
find out.
yeah, I don't think they did overall. I don't know. Do you reckon it was just like, oh, who's got the best surname? We'll
Yeah,
go with
maybe.
that.
I mean, Joe obviously wasn't a big fan of his original surname, which I still cannot pronounce.
Oh, it's I think I learned how to pronounce it. This is my
Yep,
attempt. Schweivogel.
that
Schweivogel.
works.
I think that's yeah. I think that's how you pronounce it. If I'm completely wrong, then I just send us an email. Please send us an email. Tell me I got it wrong. Um, so the reason why Joe decided to run for governor is because he was opposed to this Big Cat Public Safety Act, which he was completely
Mm-hmm.
opposed of. And obviously Carol and Howard were for it because it doesn't affect them. It's basically you can't have a big cat as a pet. You wouldn't be able to breed them. There was like super light laws all about this, and also Doc Antle was completely against this as well
It's a
because
big part of his business.
his bit, yeah, big part of his business as well. So yeah, like they was it Doc Antle ends up going to the places and stuff and like having like little
Cub parties.
was it little cub parties for the people like oh don't vote for this
Yeah,
act
I
like
think I think
oppose it and stuff.
Carol explains it, doesn't she? Where she says like once the Doc Antle had taken these cats in to meet these I guess government individuals or
Yeah, it's like
senators maybe.
politicians, I guess,
Yeah.
senators probably. Yeah,
Once they've done that and there's like picture evidence and it's been put out there in the media or social media, once that's been done, it's very difficult for them to then say that they are against it because then they become hypocrites. So it's actually a very, very smart thing to do. Like Doc Antle is a very intelligent man. The man knows what he's doing.
yeah, exactly. And I don't know, he's always one step
Yeah,
ahead in this,
yeah.
I think.
He's
And
he's like he's like
uh,
like him and Joe are very similar, but also polar opposites. If that makes any sense. Like Joe is kind of gun ho in his attempt to stop people, whereas Antle is kind of like he really periodically thinks things through and goes, okay, this like again like it's a chess game, and unfortunately, it comes across that maybe Joe isn't too great at chess, whereas Antle like he knows how to play.
he's the chess
Yeah.
master. Matt, are you outside right now?
I'm not outside, no.
Because all I can hear is like birds and stuff in the
I
background.
do. I've got my window open. Like there's mate. There's like shit tons of birds lately. I don't know if it's because there's no one out, but like obviously I'm kind of more countryside. There's a shit ton of birds about, man.
Guys, we've got like another guest on the podcast. Tweety's just coming.
Big Bird, what do you think? Well, guys, I really think it's a good show. All these tigers.
I'm keeping this in. I'm keeping this in definitely because I feel like it feels like they've put like a lovely track on the background.
See, I was worried about you hearing my neighbours because they appear to be having a barbecue with like music playing. Like at the beginning of the podcast, there was Your Own Personal Jesus playing. And I was like, oh man, what if that comes through? But yeah, the birds, there's just a ton of them about at the moment, man.
Well, guys, we might even hear the police in the background at some point, so listen out for that. As these people should be social distancing, they shouldn't be holding barbecues.
Very true. Very true.
Yes. Anyway, Joe thought that the political stuff would lead to more traffic at the zoo, but Jeff overall thought it actually damaged the zoo overall. It went against him. And also Joe put up signs in the gift shop saying that he was going to run for president in 2020. Oh, this year. Oh my God. We could. Who knows? It's still
That's
early.
it. That's
Still
it.
early,
Might
guys.
happen. Might happen.
Yeah. He might have a bit of a problem being in jail and all, but I don't know.
Is he still in jail though?
I don't know. Because I'm assuming it right now he's in jail still, but we'll find out later on, I guess.
Maybe episode 8 is the big reveal. I'm running for president again, ladies and gentlemen. I'm out of prison.
Who was that? Who was that, man? Who's running for president as well?
He's in the room. He's in the room.
Him and Tweety. It's all good. Okay. Yeah, so Jeff basically says, look, this park is not going to fund your political campaign. Let's get back to focusing on the animals, which is fair enough. I mean, it's a zoo. Joe's completely turned his back on that zoo at this point.
He's found yet another new passion. It feels very much like trying to look at it kind of psychologically, that like trying to delve deep psychologically with it. It feels like Joe really just like I think the producer of his TV show, I think Rick Kirkman, was it? Rick Kirkman?
No, it's Kirkham.
Well,
yeah, Kirkham.
Like he said, didn't he? He said like Joe is desperate to be famous, like absolutely desperate to be famous. And it does, like looking at it like kind of on a psychological level, it really feels like Joe just really, really wants to be loved. And perhaps this is another avenue for him to that he believes he can get that. Like, oh, the zoo's not working out now. Sod that, sod the animals. It's time for me to shine. But yeah,
but without these animals, he wouldn't be anything.
No,
exactly.
But at this point, like Joe doesn't care about that. He is where he is now. He doesn't need the animals anymore. Now what he wants is he wants to take that next step. But it does that's the impression I get. I get the impression that Joe, like, he hasn't really found his place. And that's being very, very kind to Joe as well. Like I say, like the more I kind of find out and the more this goes on, it's like I get a little bit more disappointed with Joe's actions. But yeah, to me at least, looking at a psychological level, it comes across to me, and I've not studied this by any means, so I could be completely wrong. But just my own thoughts. It comes across that he just really, really wants to be loved. And maybe he doesn't go about it in the right way. Perhaps he goes about it in the worst ways possible. But I think deep down there's something there. There's a hole. There's a hole in Joe that he's trying to fill.
He's trying to fill it with like fame, isn't he? And
fame, adoration, love.
So Joe doesn't like Alan whatsoever. Alan Glover, the guy we were talking about at the beginning of the episode, the one that Jeff got in as his like little, was it? His like right hand man.
Jeff's ex-con friend.
Yeah, and I realized this reason why is because up to this point, everybody in this park worked for Joe previously. So if Joe said something, then they would take notice of Joe. Full stop.
Joe.
This guy
Joe's
Alan,
the Tiger King.
Yeah, exactly. This guy Alan comes in, who's hired by Jeff. He's not taking like any notice of Joe. Full stop, is he? Because he's not taking orders from Joe because he was hired by Jeff. Like Joe's nothing. Like he's the, what was it? His job title was like the entertainment director. Mm-hmm. So like that's literally nothing to do with anything. There's a whole thing between them, and you see like Joe kind of losing his shit, talking to the staff and that, and then we see Joe has a little bit of a problem shooting one of his videos with some tigers. Well, tigers and ligers. I think they're ligers actually. And one animal, one cat, basically keeps on trying to go for his
Yeah, it's
foot.
like the cat approaches Joe, and straight away is drawn to his feet, drawn to his shoes, and at first it's kind of playfully sniffing, and then
Yeah,
it's like the only way I could describe it is if if you had a pet dog and and you put like a dog treat within your shoes, and dogs have an incredible sense of smell, and obviously dogs go absolutely nuts for treats, and that's the only way I could describe it, is if you had hidden like a dog treat in your shoe and were walking around, like say your garden, and then you set your dog out, and it's going to go straight for the feet. It's going to be sniffing. It's going to be like, okay, yeah, there's food in there. I want that. But yeah, the cat, the big cat, then just it basically swipes Joe to the floor, doesn't it?
yeah, and he like gets dragged along the floor with by the big cat, and he's like, he just out of obviously nowhere, he kind of like pulls out a gun and fires like a shot, like a warning shot up in the air,
It really
and
scared me at first. I really thought at first that he'd shot the liger, and that would, at that exact moment, I was like, okay, yeah, like you've any remainder of kind of liking towards Joe I had kind of just in a one fell swoop gone. But then luckily I was like, okay, no, yeah, like you say, it was a warning shot into the air, to kind of just spook the liger, I guess. But yeah, I must say at first I thought he had shot the liger, and yeah,
the big
yeah,
cat. We
yeah.
don't know. We're not.
But yeah, that would have been horrendous. Obviously, I guess you'd have to defend yourself in that situation. But I think he was hitting it with his crutch, wasn't he, at first?
Yeah, it was him with his crutch, and then he kind of lost the crutch. But then after that, like the big cats seem like angry towards him. They're like kind of like proper like backs up
Mm-hmm.
and everything towards him, and like they were gonna
Yeah,
absolutely pounce. And he fires a couple more shots and stuff, and then you kind of see him like go over to the other side of the pen, and like they're
yeah.
following him, and he goes into like the little river that's around the outside, and I think he's just standing in the river. But he's basically saying, he basically threatens to shoot the cats right between the eyes, and he's like, "I'm gonna shoot you right between the eyes, bitch!" like, um, and it was like, yeah, he's absolutely adamant that someone put something on his
Yeah.
shoe to entice
Mm-hmm.
those cats.
What's
It
your
cuts.
opinion on that? Because I kind I don't know. Yeah,
I can
yeah,
see
it
that.
does.
I
It
can
does
definitely see
feel
that.
like, because like Joe obviously has a relationship with these cats, and it
Mm.
doesn't at least appear through all the rest of the documentary that we've seen that at any time they've done anything like this. I mean, I guess the only thing they have done was the situation with Saf, but that came
Yeah,
across that Saf's arm was in the cage.
yeah,
So, but yeah, it does look like there was possibly a bit of foul play there.
yeah. I think so. It
But
was
by
because
who?
it might. It, I don't know. I mean, it kind of almost feels like it's pointing at slightly at
Mm-hmm.
Alan overall, like him being the kind of like the new guy
Yeah.
who's come in. But then I don't know. Even Jeff was kind of saying like, "Oh, Joe was being like a little bitch about this whole thing, constantly complaining about Alan every couple hours of the day,
Yeah.
just like
I
constantly."
mean,
Um,
at this point, I'm not very trusting of. I mean, I didn't feel very trusting of Jeff as it was anyway. There was just something about him, perhaps perhaps what we spoke about before.
yeah,
But yeah, like him and Alan now together, and obviously they've known each other for quite some time. Like, it almost feels like Alan was possibly brought in for a reason. And perhaps this was
Yeah,
the
just
reason. We need Joe out of the picture.
I don't think so. I mean, it's weird because he was being filmed in there, but nobody come
Yeah.
to his rescue, like at all. Like, and they were just filming him, like just. I mean, it was someone filming him.
Yeah.
So
It's horrible because it's
it,
it's it's kind of a play on a lot of society today. Whereas,
yeah,
like there could be a car crash or something, and sadly in today's society, a lot of people, I'm not saying everyone, but a lot of people would stand and film on their mobile telephones as opposed to actually going, this person might need help, maybe I should go and try and help them. So it's quite a good play on how society is today.
yeah, absolutely. Like, if there was someone who falls to the floor and starts like having a fit, half the people probably, instead of ringing like the emergency services, they would
Yeah,
just film for a bit. Just
it's sad,
you know.
really. It's very sad.
So yeah, um, yeah. So it cuts to Carol, and Carol says, "You wouldn't use like cologne, because like Joe thinks it's like someone put cologne on
Yeah.
his shoes to cause the big cats." And Carol's like, "Oh, you wouldn't use cologne. You'd use sardine oil. Something that the cats like because with cologne it would make him drool
Yeah,
or
which
something."
that comment doesn't make sense to me. Like,
Which is obviously speaking from
yeah,
experience.
but at the same time, yeah, maybe, maybe. But yeah, at the same time, like, so what would cologne? So cologne would make them just drool. So what? They're just gonna drool? They're not gonna be like, what's that strange smell? Like, if those ligers or whatever type of big cats they are have never smelt cologne before, then that's a brand new, fresh scent. That's if it was cologne. Who knows what it was? How do we know for sure it was?
I'm I'm not even sure what it means by drool. I don't know if it kind of makes them. I mean, because imagine having like aftershave or something on that's like really potent. Like it, if they obviously rely
Mm-hmm.
on smell, it would probably kind of make them. It'd be overpowering. All you can smell is like
Yeah, yeah.
chemicals or
I
one
would
particular
I
thing.
would think
So
like it would make them turn away more than anything else. But either
yeah,
way, it's
um,
I think personally there's more to that situation than we know about.
So then we find out from Jeff and James that Joe's husbands have been sleeping around like the park with people, obviously not the animals. And we find out that Travis has pretty much slept with every girl in the zoo, and even Joe's other husband John had slept with the receptionist Amber, her name was, and
Yeah.
yeah, and Joe finds out because Amber ends up getting pregnant. And there was like a massive argument because of that. And
You can understand, like, obviously, Joe thinks he's got everything he wanted in these two guys, and then finds out that actually, that then it's more likely to Joe. It probably comes across that they're kind of basically using him for all the gifts that they receive of him, just as much as his possibly using them. But yeah, you can understand Joe becoming angry at this. But yeah, kind of crazy.
yeah, I mean, but then you realize that it kind of is a toxic relationship. I mean, Joe's buying John all this like fancy stuff, like loads of trucks, a was it like a rifle that's got pink camo on it.
Yeah.
And for Travis, he's basically just supplied him with like loads of drugs. Even and John, I guess, as well, because they're both on meth. And
You can see from John's teeth that obviously he's definitely had a problem with meth. But yeah, and it very much comes across as that kind of way of like almost like entrapment.
Yeah, because they do seem. I know Travis comes. It's weird because we see Travis in the documentary. I would say for the first time since like the first time we've seen him in there. Like there was like that little video where it's like him introducing himself. But this episode, this part, is probably the first time we've seen him in it properly, talking to the camera, and he looks really agitated, like really
like depressed, upset.
Yeah, just manic.
Yeah, and well, they say or he says that he's not able to even leave the zoo. So it really does come across like he's almost there against his will.
Yeah. It's he says to Joshua, he says that he feels like a prisoner. And you see him at one point like punch a truck, and he's just like so angry, and he like really goes for that, doesn't he?
Yeah, really. Like, he punched it a few times, and it's just you can tell it's an absolute point of anger and frustration for him, where he's just. I think at that point you can see that he's come to the end of his tether with the whole situation. And I think he says, doesn't he? After he punches the truck, like obviously the camera's on him, and he basically says that Joe doesn't listen to him. Like it comes across like, oh, if I have a problem and I take it to Joe will listen for maybe 5 minutes, but then he doesn't care. And yeah, he just looks like he's at his wit's end at this point. But again, I don't know if Joe is supplying him with the drugs. Then obviously that's a form of control. So Joe could as well be like withholding the drugs from him. Joe might have the drugs there, and he could be saying, well, you don't get it till Tuesday. And that in itself, for anyone that's got any kind of an addiction, that brings on a frustration and an anger. So it could be a lot to do with that as well.
Yeah, it's like Joseph Dial, he says like this really good bit, which I wrote down the whole thing. He says, there are people out there, they will look at a person who is in desperate, dire need of something. In Travis's case, he was addicted to meth. And they take that need and fulfill it until they become the only person who can fulfill that need. And in exchange, the person gives them whatever sexual or other favors they want. That's the relationship that Joe has with Travis. So it comes across like maybe Joe, as you said, like is kind of withholding stuff from him, like say the drugs.
It's control, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe for, I know, like sexual favors and stuff, like you're not going to get any meth until you sleep with me or that kind of thing.
I don't know if you've noticed, but there's been a few shots in the documentary where Joe appears really affectionate, even to Travis at times. But Travis looks like he's like almost like cringing at it. Like it really comes across like, I really don't want to be doing this. But obviously for his addiction and his need, that's his only way of like filling that hole of that addiction. But yeah, I've noticed that a few times where it's like, well, yeah, that doesn't look like a two-way street or three-way street even with those guys. Travis just looks really, really uncomfortable in a lot of the scenes with Joe. And any other scene where he doesn't look so uncomfortable, he looks absolutely off his head. So again, that probably helps mask the situation. He's just in a really vicious circle here. Like one thing feeds the next, and it's continuous. Just a really, really bad situation to be in. And he's only a young man as well.
Yeah,
like,
just 19.
Yeah, like it's not. at 19, like when I was 19, I remember thinking, like, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing. But all these years later now, I look back at myself at 19 and I'm thinking, well, you didn't know jack. Like, you knew nothing. Like, life hasn't come and slapped you in the face yet. Like, but yeah, in this episode, I really, really start to feel sorry for Travis.
Yeah, and also you see John say that throughout school he was he always had girlfriends, and
he was straight.
Yeah, and it's only since, I guess, maybe meeting Joe that he's kind of married him, and I don't know. I just feel like, because they both, because a lot of people in the documentary, a lot of the people interviewed, they say, oh, they're both straight men, and they were mainly just doing this because Joe had that kind of drug hold over them. It's like they're dating their dealer, or married their dealer even.
Like I've seen since and read since that John actually started out as just a normal worker at the zoo.
Okay.
So he was like working mainly with the crocodilians, and I think it was somewhere within that time that obviously Joe struck up the relationship with him. And it was obviously, as you can see, with a lot of the people that work there, they're not paid a lot of money. They're basically given bed and board, but their food is from a Walmart truck. So it's not the greatest food in the world because it's obviously out of date. So I think there was obviously a time with John where Joe was like, well, you can live a better life if you do this for me, and then I'll buy you all this great stuff that you'd want. So I think that's possibly how that came about. And I've also read since that Travis was actually a cameraman. He started there as a cameraman. So I don't know whether it was I don't think it was with this documentary crew, or whether it was with what's his name?
Rick Kirkham.
That's it. The guy, doing the reality TV show, or whether it was Joe, like getting in a cameraman to film things, because obviously we've seen there's a big YouTube channel for Joe with like just so much content and videos from around the zoo and all kinds of things. So I don't know if he was maybe hired for that, and then Joe just seems to see what he wants and takes it.
Yeah, and it's weird because, like, going back to, I think it was last episode where we're discussing whether or not Joe burnt down the studio slash crocodilian hut, I guess. I don't know. It kind of makes you think that if John sleeping with Amber had happened before or after this, because it makes you wonder if Joe was angry and he thought, like, that reminds me of John, and I'm just gonna burn it down, like, as like a double fuck you kind of.
Yeah, like if he did do it, if Joe did start the fire, because remember we were saying before, if he did it, like surely he would take out or move the crocodiles beforehand or do something like that. But like you say, maybe this was like a get back at John as well. Again, purely speculation.
Yeah, definitely speculation. That's that's a new low, like a new low. Yeah. If Joe did do that because of that.
But I just thought as well, once it was yesterday, I think, last night I read up, like it was about Travis mainly, and about how he actually ended up there. And when I found out, like, he started there as a cameraman, I don't know. Like, I think that he started there as a cameraman. He was already probably smoking weed. And then, like, Joe was like, well, I can get you even more of that. And then it just progressed from there. It went from weed to, these harder drugs. And then he was really trapped, because once you're addicted to something like meth, it's very difficult to come off of it.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's just, I mean, I've seen Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
But then we move on to, I don't know, the most horrible part of the whole episode, I think, which is basically Travis goes into the office and sees Joshua there. And Travis, at this point, like in the documentary, people always said that he would like point guns on people and joke about. And you see a bit where he's on he's just riding around and he's got like a gun and he's like pointing it at the camera as he's going past.
It's on like a quad bike, isn't it?
Yeah, on the back of a quad bike. And so, it's a common thing. So Josh had always told him, like, don't point your gun at me. He always used to do it. There's a part where Josh says that he would get woken up like with Travis just pointing the gun like directly at him, which
it's just absolutely terrifying.
Yeah,
like whether
even if it was a joke, it's just
it's just totally. It's just, you don't do that, do you? I wouldn't do that to a friend, a colleague, or anything. Like,
no,
it's a step too far, really. But as well, just before it goes on to this next bit we're about to talk about, you see Travis in a field, and he's got a carton of cigarettes, and it looks like there's one left, and he's got a gun in his hand. Travis always seems to have a gun in his hand, but yeah, he says to the camera, "This is my last cigarette before I die." But again, like, at this point, we've heard that Travis is a bit of a prankster. So even in the documentary, you think nothing of it. You just think, oh, he's a young lad. He's just being silly. He doesn't mean that. It's literally just it's just that kind of angst. Do you know what I mean? And then obviously, we move on to that next scene.
Plus, there's no guarantee that was even on the same day or even the same month as like that. I mean,
exactly.
it's probably around the same. It's like a Bollingford Columbine situation where stuff is told out of sequence to kind of seem a bit more dramatic.
Fair enough. It could have happened. Could have happened weeks before, for all we know. But again, it just doesn't state, does it? So
yeah. So Travis walks into the office. He sees Josh there, and he's like, "Freeze, motherfucker!" And Josh is like, "Dude, you know not to point guns." And Travis is like, "Oh man, this is a Ruger. There's no clip in it. You know a Ruger won't fire without a clip." And at this point, you see Josh, like, it's told through the lens of a security camera in the office, and all you can see is just Josh just sitting there, just talking to someone, and you can't see anybody else in the shot. And that's when Josh said that Travis put the gun up to his head and pulled the trigger. And at this point, you see like a white flash, like on the security camera, and just pure horror and shock on Josh's face.
Yeah, it's really, really difficult to watch. I mean, again, like you said, you only get it from that point of view. I would believe, in fact, I know that footage does exist of Travis being shot or shooting himself. It's not out there, but I've heard in one of the David Spade interviews. I forget who he was talking to, but one of them said, like, yeah, we've seen the footage. It does exist. Because I think David Spade asked, like, does that footage exist? And he was like, and the person he was talking to, they said, everything was filmed in that zoo, everything. And there were cameras everywhere, even within the offices, within the gift shop, everywhere. So that footage does exist. But I mean, even if that was out there to view, I would never want to see that. It's not something I would choose to look up and go, I really want to see someone blow their brains out. No, not for me. I'm sure there are some that would. Not for me, though. Yeah. Not my cup of tea whatsoever. But even just seeing from seeing Joshua's reaction, it's harrowing, and you can only imagine what that poor guy's going through, even to this day, because that's not something you get over. That's the type of stuff that sticks with you to the grave. And yeah, it is harrowing. It's difficult to watch. It's like, I don't know if you felt the same, but it almost feels like you're there. Like, it's that powerful, especially the reaction of Joshua, just absolute shock and awe. And like, for me, it feels like that's one scene in this whole documentary series so far where it really feels like it brings you into it, which I guess to a degree makes it even more difficult. But yeah, just horrible. And horrible to think of anyone getting to that point to actually do it. I mean, I guess you could say, well, was it meant as a prank? I don't think it would be. The only way I guess that it could have been meant as a prank and gone as terribly wrong as it did is if Travis was like high at the time, like possibly on meth. I wouldn't say on weed, but on something like meth, then you could say, yeah, he was doing it whilst intoxicated, thinking he was joking around, and then just made the biggest mistake of his life. But I think it was meant. I think from the little we see of Travis, you can see that he's a bit of a broken man. And that's just really sad for a 19-year-old to be at that point.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if he was 19 at this time, because I know he got married when he was 19. I think it was, no, he met him when he was 19. I did think that though, like when watching the doc, that was, when I seen this scene, it's just a long pause where you just watching Josh and like his reaction and him kind of like, probably just shouting Travis, and then just panicking, thinking like, what do you do? And he kind of like, because at this point he thinks that Travis is just messing around with him. And if I was there in that situation, I'd think I'd want to go find out if it's a prank. You want to go see if that's all just make believe, like, the blood off him and stuff. But then you feel like, but do you want to? Like, it's just so.
Yeah, I personally think that he knew. I think because, like, I don't know if you've ever been to a sort of like little gun range type thing, but the sound of an actual weapon like that is very different to like the type of things you have as kids, where you've got like a cap gun, where it makes like the sound of like what you think as a child is the sound of a gun. But you can imagine in an enclosed space like that office, the sound would just like bounce off the walls. And I think from the shock on Joshua's face, you realize that he understood what he just witnessed. But I guess there's always going to be that part in your mind that wants to think that it isn't real, and you wish that it isn't real, especially if you know the person too. So I think, like, because you see the shock and he takes a while to get up, and that shows me that is genuine shock. And then it's like Joshua comes to, and because it feels like he's put in a trance by this. And some people do, like, when they experience a shocking, traumatic moment like that, like they say one of the key things of the shock is to freeze up. You just freeze up. You can't move. You can't speak. And yeah, like he comes to at that point, and you see him just get up and sort of move out of screen. But yeah, it's very, very tough to watch, and I feel so bad for Travis, and I feel so bad for Joshua. Like, for both of them, it's just absolutely horrendous, and I would say avoidable. the whole
Yeah.
situation was avoidable. And it's just really sad that it got to that point.
Yeah, this part of I actually shouted at the TV when I watched this. I was like so in shock. I did not see that coming whatsoever.
Yeah.
It was just like I kind of sensed something was about to happen, and then all of a sudden it was like, what? I couldn't believe it.
You never think it's going to be that bad, do you? Like,
No.
just tough. And I would imagine that everyone that has watched this, that would be their kind of the scene that kind of sticks out the most in terms of like shocking them.
Yeah.
Just horrible.
Josh says after this he just leaves that's it. He's done with the whole thing after this, and he can't go back to work there because it's just being in that mindset. Just okay, I'm in the office where this happened. You would never forget. So I imagine at this point the campaign was practically almost over anyway. And I don't know. I'm not. It's kind of hard to tell in the timeline of events whereabouts this was, but it's just pure.
It's strange, like because Joshua, like he comes across as one of the most level-headed people in the whole documentary. Level-headed and just down to earth, nice person. And it comes across that he really does, like, he kind of feels sorry for Joe. And he kind of sees that maybe Joe is, Joe doesn't go around about things in the best way, but a lot of people kind of take advantage of that. And I think Joshua had this kind of, like, he maybe saw Joe as a bit of an underdog and wanted to back him. And yeah, like, even that must be so difficult because it comes across he really wants to help Joe. But then after witnessing something like that, like you couldn't go back to a place like where you'd witnessed that because it would draw that memory right to the forefront of your mind every time you went into work. You couldn't cope with that. Like that
PTSD.
would just, 100%.
Yeah. After this, we move on to the funeral, Travis's funeral, and Joe's there. He's giving a speech. He's dressed in his Here Kitty costume. His is dressed as a cowboy with his like was it the dog collar, and he's just standing there like, and it's at this point it's really hard to understand Joe. Like really hard to. I had to watch it with subtitles. I found it really difficult to understand him on this part.
He sounds drunk. Like,
which I mean,
it's
a funeral.
Not even that though. I think this whole the whole episode, Joe. This episode is. I think this is definitely breaking point for Joe. And this whole episode, like, obviously us being from the UK, sometimes, some American, like, Southern accents, we might not be able to understand as easily as other accents. But for the most part in the documentary, like, I've understood Joe's accent and it's, I haven't really had any trouble with it. But this was the episode where I had to put on subtitles because he seemed really slurry, and just he's not the same guy almost in terms of the way he spoke. But again, you can kind of understand that if he did really love Travis, which I don't know if he did or he didn't. I still can't answer that question.
I think he did.
I suppose there must have been something there.
Yeah, like, he wouldn't have married someone otherwise. So.
Yeah, and he would have just found the next young guy that come along. But yeah, you can understand that Joe would be distraught by this, and especially in the way it happened. I suppose there's probably also a case of maybe that it would look bad on him, like because Joe does come across that way a bit, that it's kind of like he's the star of that show, like, and I think even with the funeral, like, how he's dressed in his outfit from the Hey Kitty video, and he's at one point singing or miming, as we know, a song, which you just think, would you really do that? Like, would you do that at your spouse's funeral? But Joe, what you get from Joe in this whole thing is Joe is a showman, through and through. Like, he is an absolute showman. Like, and it is a case of like, it almost comes across as like the show must go on.
He does. It does feel like it's kind of. There's a few people who get interviewed about this, and they do say it's kind of feels like it's just Joe, like putting on the show on at this point. And was like his. We don't hear most of the speech he talks about, but the bit we do see, which is the bit that's kind of a bit strange, is obviously him talking about Travis's balls and how it made him feel happy and stuff. Like he'd be writing a letter to, I know, the state about something, and then all of a sudden Travis would come over, put his balls in his face, his golden nuggets, as he liked to refer to them as, I guess.
I think he said at one point, like, everyone's seen Travis's balls. Like, everyone in this zoo has seen Travis's balls. So maybe it was like a common thing. Like, perhaps Travis would run around naked or something. I mean, you just don't know. It's a crazy place. Like, some crazy stuff goes on at that zoo. But not what you would, or not what I would talk about at a funeral. Wouldn't be the story I would bring up personally, especially if the person that is deceased, if their mum was there, which she was, because she worked at the park too.
Did you think that she was like kind of? She looked like she was like gurning, if that makes any sense. Like kind of her mouth was kind of going like a bit.
I got from the from what we see of Travis's mum, I'm no expert, but I definitely think that she's also on drugs, and that is obviously, again, that's me just guessing and thinking that. I don't know that as fact. But yeah, she comes across like, you if you've seen any kind of documentaries before on like users of, or abusers and users of meth, amphetamine, you notice that they get a kind of itch and they're constantly scratching, and kind of, it's like I guess it's like a tick, like a sort of nervous tick that comes along with it. And I noticed in, like, when she sat there at the funeral, like, she's constantly like rubbing her hands, and it just, you can rub your hands, anyone can rub their hands, and it's a normal thing, but in the way she's doing it massively reminded me of like what I've seen of people that use meth. So yeah, I think she possibly is on drugs too, and I did wonder if that's why she's been brought in to work there as well. Like, if Joe wasn't not only supplying Travis with drugs, maybe he was supplying Travis's mother too.
Yeah, I kind of to get that impression as well, but don't know. This is one thing that stood out. So,
like, if you were a parent of someone working at a place like this, and I mean, if you're a parent of someone, you're going to know if they're like spaced out on drugs and basically ruining their life. Wouldn't you be angry? You wouldn't go and work for that person, would you? That is supplying that. You'd be angry at them unless that person had a hold over you just as much as they did the son. So that really did make me wonder.
I mean, it was a hell of a traumatic event, like your son dying. So I imagine even if she wasn't on drugs before, like, I mean, after this, she probably, it might have been something. Oh, Joe says, "Oh, here's some meth to take your mind off things, to make you feel a bit better."
Yeah, maybe.
No,
but yeah. I mean, maybe. We don't know, do we? But I just can't see that myself. But playing devil's advocate, yeah, maybe.
After the funeral, we see Joe doing this like kind of feed thing where we see that he's put on like a buffet. He does this apparently every Christmas and Thanksgiving. I'm not too sure if this is at the funeral or it might just be around Christmas or Thanksgiving at this point.
It's hard to tell.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like summer to me, but who knows? And yeah, we see him kind of crying, tearing up about putting on the food. Well, not putting on the food, just because of putting the food. But we also see Travis's memorial that the local biker club helped build. It was like like a quad? It was 2 quad bikes on some kind of rockery thing.
I think that was really nice.
Yeah, I thought it cool.
Yeah.
Joe said he would go out there, he would like have a cigarette in the morning and just stare up at the clouds, and he would take pictures of the clouds because occasionally he would see like writing in the clouds, like hi, or he would see like a perfect angel, and just for proof. So he'd take pictures of the clouds just because he thinks that Travis is kind of communicating with him.
Yeah, which is kind of that's kind of a natural thing, I think, for a lot of people when they lose a loved one. That it's whether they are actually being shown signs or whether they're looking for those signs. They're looking for that, and maybe with Joe it was a bit of guilt deep down, and maybe him looking for that is that's his way of saying to himself that Travis doesn't blame him.
Yeah.
So again, maybe that's more for Joe's own conscience more than anything else. Maybe not. Maybe it is just, that kind of classic thing of when someone dies and you get these kind of sort of subtle messages. But yeah, it's even that's tough. Again, with Joe, I find I'm so on the fence with this guy. He is the Walter White of this show. He is that guy completely that you are, in one moment, you're absolutely despising him because you're like, well, you've done this. You've made this happen. You've ruined this guy's life. But there's no doubt in my mind that Joe's upset. Extremely upset.
I mean, there's a part where James and Jeff don't believe his emotions, and they think it's all just nonsense. His him playing up to the cameras and that, using his the death as an excuse. At this point, Jeff says that Joe, after Travis's death, Joe completely lost it. At this point,
yeah,
and Jeff decides to go off to Vegas to basically set up a thing called the Jungle Bus, and it's party animals. No, not party animals. It's like a party bus with animals, which would probably ferry people from casino to casino. Which Jeff says is turned out it was a terrible idea. Which, I can imagine, having all these little tigers and animals and stuff on there around drunk people. It just sounds like a recipe for disaster, and super cruel as well.
Yeah, 100%. Just not. A lot of the time Jeff comes across as quite intelligent in the way he goes about things, but yeah, this was a dumb idea, a very dumb idea on many levels, more than just one level, on many levels.
Yeah, it was, I don't know. Plus you think when the bus is stopping at say traffic lights and that, the little cubs probably rocking all over the place and might be lashing out at this point. And as we found out, that cubs can only be used for a couple of weeks. So he has to have a constant supply of, usable cubs at this point as well.
Exactly. Because
who knows what happens to them after that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't like to think really about that. But as well, with the cubs being used for a couple of weeks, it's because when cubs do reach a certain age, you can't play with them anymore. It's not that they would kill you. But it's the fact that their claws developed enough where it would require stitches. So you would more likely be hospitalized. And especially if you're cuddling a cub, if that just has a little playful scratch at your neck or something, that could be incredibly dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it could be a lot of lawsuits for old Jeff there.
Oh dear, and that's exactly what Jeff doesn't want.
No.
So we go into Joe's room, and we find out about Joe's Prince Albert piercing. And that he has like a wall with like loads of locks on it that he uses on
like
his
padlocks.
Prince. Yeah, like padlocks that he puts on his dick. And he's had a Prince Albert piercing for 18 years. We wondered, what's going on here? Not just finding out about his dick piercing, but we find out he's going on a date with a guy called Dylan, who looks, remarkable, quite a lot like Travis. Yeah, he looks really young.
A less kind of stoner version of Travis, but still that kind of skate look, Yeah.
Yeah, he does look kind of like a skater, surfer kind of guy. So,
yeah.
so
yeah, like Joe definitely he does have a type on this, but as well so soon after Travis's death.
Yeah, they met in the chat room. Joe picks him up in a limo. They go out for like just a parade, because I think this is around the time that Joe's he's on in the parade, and he's on top of the limo. I think it's that same day, as far as I can tell.
Yeah,
or around that time anyway. And we find out that Joe proposes to Dylan, and Dylan goes, yes. He doesn't want to waste any like these opportunities, and he decides to, marry Joe. And this is 2 months after Travis's death. He invites Joe invites Travis's mum to the wedding as well, which turns out and she goes because like if you get invited to a wedding, but she didn't realize it would just be her, like maybe like Dylan's mum, like a couple of film crew, and it just seems just crazy, doesn't it? It's only a few of them.
Even that though, you say you get invited to a wedding, you go, but would you? If you had a child that took their own life because of this toxic relationship, would you then go to the ex's new wedding 2 months, Ian? 2 months after the fact? I don't think you would. I certainly wouldn't.
When you put it into like that context, then yeah, I probably wouldn't. I'd be like, "Are you taking the piss?" Like
exactly.
You'd still be grieving 2 months after that. It doesn't just disappear. It's like it's a wound that just
it does not make sense, and this goes more to that kind of theory of I think that Joe had maybe a little bit of control over her via drugs. That screams that to me, because otherwise, if you weren't heavily addicted to a substance that you could only get from this person, then there would be absolutely no other reason for you being there.
Yeah. And we realize that it's because at this point Joe's running for governor, and he thinks it's a photo opportunity having the mum of your dead ex-lover, ex-husband, like be there and giving her blessing, saying it's okay, that her son's now her son's ex-partner is now moved on, even though it's only 2 months later, because the average person who's reading a newspaper thinks, like Travis's mum is okay with this. I think I should be okay with it. It's fine.
Exactly. I mean, you could put it again that this is another kind of tactic used by Joe to make himself look good, and it almost comes across to me like, again, pure speculation, but that perhaps Joe could have said, look, you come along to this wedding, and you will receive X amount of methamphetamine, If you don't come to the wedding, if you refuse to, you'll never see me again, and you'll never get these drugs again. And we don't know if Joe is giving them free or if he's giving them to a discounted rate than what you would get on the streets normally. But again, it very much so comes across as controlling.
So it's election day, and we find out the results. We find out that Joe comes third, and he gets 19% of the vote. The overall turnout was 96%. It means he come third. The main guy who won the election got 48%. So, I mean, it's still, he did way better than you'd think.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure the overall population of Oklahoma, but there must be like a fair few thousand people who probably voted for him.
Yeah, I mean, 19% isn't bad going at all, really, is it? Like,
no.
I mean, watching this, like, us watching this, like, we look at it and think, well, there is absolutely no way someone would vote for him.
No.
But obviously, there's a lot of people that saw something in Joe, rightly or wrongly. But I think a lot with Joe, again, it's that character, it's that charisma that shines through. And that kind of, I am a normal guy. I'm not one of these suits, like he said in one of his videos. You know, I'm not going to put on a pretense for you. I am me. This is me, and I will do good for people like me, i.e., you. So yeah, you can understand, I guess, why people voted for him. But yeah, 19% isn't bad going.
And it wasn't because of the Joe Exotic for Governor condoms that he gave out to everybody. And those T-shirts where there's like a bit where you see like a little kid with like about 6 T-shirts in his hand. That kid couldn't even vote as well. So
all that free merch.
He must have so many of those condoms left over. Just like he's like, "Hello, Dylan. Let me go put on my let me put my Joe Exotic condom with his face on it."
You think Joe wears condoms?
I think he wears his own brand. You know, that'd be like kind of a let's. But then we find out that everything has practically fallen apart back at the zoo. Eric and Saf are there, and they seem pissed off at Joe. Eric says that Joe's just lost his passion somewhere. That everybody thought that Joe's cared about the campaign way more than the zoo. The zoo is just kind of falling on, the back burner.
Yeah.
And we see bits of the zoo, and it just looks like a mess overall. I think I don't know. It's too much. It could be after like some kind of storm, because there's like a lot of trees, just like branches and stuff, just falling down. Like I guess it's winter as well, so it didn't look as green as it did previously.
Yeah, it definitely looks like it needs some care and attention. Yeah, it looks like it's lacked any real care at all.
But Joe seems paranoid at this point. Like he seems really off, like really weird. And Josh says that we knew something was going on. He was always a paranoid person, throwing people out, accusing them of being spies, but the paranoia was not unfounded. We found a microphone and an antenna on the top of his gift shop roof. That's when I knew something was seriously going on. So they found like a listening device on top of the gift shop roof. Like, what do you think of that? That's pretty crazy end to the episode.
Yeah, really crazy end to the episode. And it doesn't look like any like small listening device either. It's a proper antenna on top of the roof, so it's quite visible. I suppose if you're not trained to notice that type of thing or understand what it is, or if you just think, oh, some people have been doing some work, it's just something to do with the internet, or it could be anything. But yeah, it's really crazy. Quite the cliffhanger yet again.
Yeah, do you reckon it's something like Jeff's put in there to spy on Joe, or do you reckon
quite possibly? But yeah, it's very hard to tell at this point. but yeah, quite possibly it could be something yet again to be used against Joe, because by this point you kind of realize that Jeff wants Joe out of the picture.
Absolutely.
He wants rid of Joe, and that could be we know what Joe's like, and we know what Joe's like on camera. So imagine what he's like when the red light isn't on. So if he's saying things in there that he wouldn't normally say on camera, that could be a perfect opportunity for Jeff to just take in everything from underneath him.
Then we find out the director says, basically, the director goes and interviews Jeff, and during this time, he has loads of phone calls from this one particular federal agent over and over and over again when interviewing him, and he thinks it's like really weird, and he basically says that Jeff said that Joe's going down. It's over for Joe. Like, why do you reckon the feds are looking into Joe? At this point, like, what do you reckon is going to happen?
It could be anything, couldn't it? Really? I mean, it could be to do with Carol. It could be to do with the way he runs this zoo, and some of the atrocities that maybe have taken place there. It could be absolutely anything. It could be to do with Travis.
Oh, maybe. It could be the breeding the animals, maybe, like, because I don't know if the law has come in at this point yet, or if
maybe, like,
because that was that was always legal. So
there's a lot that it could be, and for all we know, maybe it's an amalgamation of different things.
Yeah,
maybe there's lots of things that people are kind of becoming aware of or hearing little whispers of, and they need that kind of final actual piece of evidence to shut him down. But yeah, definitely yet again interesting to say the least, and very much so makes you want to tune in to the next episode.
Anyway, thanks for listening. If you haven't checked us out on the socials, check us out on the socials. It'd be great to hear from you. Just send us an email. Let us know how you're doing. How's your day been?
I don't know if we've said before, but like, if there's anything at all that you'd like us to talk about with anything we've missed, even from previous episodes, because like we said, there is so much going on within this documentary. So I'm sure there probably is something that we haven't gone over or we haven't delved into perhaps enough. Maybe it's something that if you're listening, you're shouting, saying, "Why aren't you talking about this?" Then email us and let us know, and we'll happily go into it within the next 2, possibly 3 episodes of Tiger King. We'd be happy to. We'd really like to hear from you.
Yeah, so send us an email to dotdotdocpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram under dotdotdoc. We're on Twitter at dotdotdoc and then an underscore because I don't know, some ladies got dotdotdoc for some reason. I don't know. We're also on YouTube as well. I'm slowly uploading the episodes to YouTube. So if you want to listen on there, if that's the way of listening to podcasts, then we've put them on there as well.
Do you know as well? Like I'd say as well, for the email or through the socials, if you have any suggestions on documentaries you'd like us to cover, obviously we won't be able to do, if we got hundreds of suggestions, I'm not saying we would, but, if there's anything you'd really like us to cover, and, maybe it's something that we haven't watched, which is, it's always great to do a podcast on a brand new watch, because a lot of the documentaries, like obviously we're quite big fans of documentaries, so a lot of them we will have seen in the past before. But yeah, if there's anything you'd like us to cover, throw some suggestions our way, and we'd happily look them over, and maybe your one could be one of the next coming up podcasts that we do.
yeah, send us your recommendations or suggestions to what we should do a podcast on next. That'd be amazing. And that's it. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
Take care and be safe, everyone.
Oh,
Jungles.
Jungle Bus.